All right, I would like to officially call to order the Tuesday, April 23rd, 2019 meeting of the Bolton Conservation Commission. And as always, we'll start with a roll call. I am Brian Barabee.
Hi, I'm Jeffrey Bryan.
Deb McNamara.
Emily Winter, Laura Stevenson,
Bill Payne.
Rebecca Warren.
Excellent. And first up this evening, the Bolton Conservation Commission will now continue the public hearing under the provisions of Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, and under the Bolton Wetland Bylaw, Chapter 233, to consider the notice of intent filed by Molly Obendorf of Stamskin McNary, Inc. regarding the proposed construction of a single-family home and associated septic system on 31 Nashway Road within the 100-foot buffer zone and 200-foot riverfront area. The public meeting to be continued at this time this evening. Is here. Hi, how are you?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the Commission. My name is Molly Obendorf. I work with Stamskin McNary. I'm representing Kevin Dunnels, who is the applicant and owner of the subject property at Lot 31 Nashway Road. Just get this a little closer.
Please, Sam.
Make sure everyone can see. And I do have some revised plans. Full size, got some reduced. We received March 22nd. I got another full size. Who wants to snag it? Letters that were submitted with the Board of Health. And this has been a long continued hearing, several months, so I'll go over the plan again. This is currently a vacant property with a perennial stream and wetlands on the site. As you can see, the wetland is pretty extensive, following this green line here, and the perennial stream is back here. So the property, the entirety of the property is engulfed in the buffer zone, as well as the majority of the property is engulfed in the 200-foot riverfront area, aside from that little corner there. So the proposed work was proposed to the minimum extent practicable to develop this property. We are proposing a 3-bedroom single-family dwelling with an associated driveway and associated private on-site septic system. The septic system utilizes a Presby Advanced Enviroseptic leaching line, which provides more treatment than a conventional system. Additionally, we have provided secondary treatment in the form of a fast unit, which just goes inside the pump chamber, and that further treats the effluent before even entering the leach field. There are revisions that were made due to the Board of Health comments, all pretty minor. The addition of the well was the biggest comment. As you can see, that does require additional disturbance to the property. However, we would allow it to naturally revegetate post-installation. We are providing a siltation barrier, which is the extent of the limit of work, and that's to prevent any indirect alteration to the wetland. Additionally, we are providing mitigation in the form of infiltration trenches, one of which is along the back foundation wall here, which provides infiltration as well as prevents any scour or erosion that were to happen from roof runoff. We've also provided an infiltration trench along the edge of the driveway, which does consist of a pea stone diaphragm and grass filter strip. When combined, those provide treatment. They remove any suspended solids that were to come with the runoff before being infiltrated into the ground. And I would like to hear any comments or questions or any suggestions the commission may have.
If anybody has any initial questions? Let's say, just when I was looking at it, and I understand you're trying to meet all the conditions possible, but when the lots were originally broken, the Wetlands Protection Act was in place. And it seems like this lot was intentionally placed in an area where it could not be built upon. The way I read it, it can't be built upon unless this was a pre-existing lot and there was, some sort of hardship variance. But when they divided these lots, they created their own hardship, which, as I read the law, you can't do. It seems like when they put this lot here and didn't develop it, it was because they knew you can't develop a lot that close to the wetlands. 100% of it's still within the buffer zone. And when I see you're meeting some of these updated standards, but that's updated for like houses that have already been built and are grandfathered in, not new construction the way I read it. Everything I've read and looked at, I don't think we can condition this. I think I'd be moved to just deny the application. I don't know.
I have to agree with you. I don't know enough about it, but it doesn't seem like, the whole thing is a wetland. And then, it seems to me that that perennial stream could change in about 2 minutes, that's all I can say. I don't know enough about the grandfathered part of it that you discussed, but it just doesn't seem like it doesn't seem like there's room for it. I don't know.
It seemed like it was created as a non-buildable lot.
Yeah, that's what I
And
think too.
I don't know why we would change that fact now. There are other, did you have any
I
thoughts,
did,
questions?
so I did review both the Wetlands Protection Act and our local bylaw. And even if it were, I know in the past it was brought up pre-existing non-conforming question. And when it comes to zoning, yes, that's applicable. In the Wetlands Protection Act, it's made to be, the local bylaw is made to be more restrictive. And we have the adjacent upland resource area, which, put that aside, you're way into the 25-foot prohibition area, which we don't allow. In addition to that, okay, now we look at adjacent upland resource area, you're in it, like you said, that's within that same buffer that's protected under the Wetlands Protection Act. So locally, I don't see how the commission would be able to condition it just based on that, forget about going into further detail. But, and then under the Wetlands Protection Act, although the commission's able to condition projects within the 100-foot buffer, it's still so close and the slopes are so steep there. I don't see it not impacting the resource area. And we've seen, especially this time of year, these impacts happen, whether it be with runoff or you have, mistakes made, which we know mistakes happen, but I don't see it as a project. I don't see it as a project, if it's allowed, that would be in the right mind of the commission based on the fact that they're faced with protecting the resource areas. And this is literally a brand new project within the resource area. And that's aside from the riverfront area and, being able to build 10%, keeping a vegetated buffer or doing mitigation, which I appreciate you've included all that, but it's still within, on a local level, forget about the state regulations, on a local level, it's encroaching on all the protected resource areas, aside from under the state, like I said, that's defined as the wildland resource area. That's my 2 cents on it, without being regulation specific.
Any questions tonight?
I think it was a buildable lot at one time. My father-in-law owned the lot. He built most of the houses on Ashaway Road, and it was a buildable lot. He just didn't build on it before the bylaws changed. And it's my son, his grandson, that Kevin, that has the land now. So does that make any difference?
Not really. So and I'll just sort of give you an example of why that doesn't make a difference. Every lot in town, before it's subdivided, we can go back years and years, and it was one lot, and you were able to build on these things. Zoning, like I said, they allow for something like that, where you can meet offsets or zoning jurisdiction areas. But the local wetlands bylaw has changed to protect the local resource areas, because as we've seen development in various areas, we've realized okay, we need to protect these areas. This is the lowest point coming, or one of the lowest points coming off of Fox Run, Kettle Hole, Vaughan Hills, so that's where it's all draining to. So from just a landscape ecological standpoint, that's a very sensitive area. Again, just for the recharge area, and then also you're adding impervious surface to that area. So regardless if you're mitigating it, at least during construction, you're gonna see an impact to that resource area. And that's what the commission is tasked to protect, is those resource areas for the benefit of the town as a whole. Whether it was once planned for a buildable area, I've seen a lot of permits come in that are buildable, but then they come before the commission and they're not. So unfortunately, sort of as time goes on, that doesn't still stay relevant.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a question?
Please, no, please.
I'm just wondering what makes you think that they created this hardship for themselves?
Just as when the lots were divided, it seems like all the other ones get built upon except for the one that's all within the buffer zones, all within the resource areas.
That's understood.
And would it be possible to put half of this lot with one of the lots across the street, switch those lots up in a way so buffer zone area was included with some of the other lots, so they can meet all of their other standards rather than having to, I mean, like you said, the well, it's in the middle of the resource area. We have to clear a bunch of the resource area to sink the well, and then we can let it renaturalize. But everything, the septic tanks, you know, I appreciate the Presby system. That's kind of what we look for if we have to wedge something in somewhere. But again, it's in the middle of the resource area. The leaching fields are in the resource area. The house in the resource area, the driveway is, the yard is, everything, like the entire projects within the area that we're supposed to be trying to keep stuff out of or minimizing impact to. I just don't know how we in good conscience say, you know, this is fine and are still trying to protect the wetlands of the town, the resources of the town.
That's understood.
That's kind of where I run with it.
I would like to remind you that this lot was created pre-bylaw.
Okay.
So at the time of this lot creation, you know, they weren't thinking ahead of time, like, oh, like what happens if we don't build on this lot now?
Right,
and
right.
yada, yada. So I don't think, respectfully disagree that they did not create a hardship for themselves, and that this is, you know, just kind of what they're stuck with now, because, you know, this.
But if somebody buys some land that there's a resource area on it, and they buy it when it's not under a certain law, and then a law becomes the law, and that land becomes underneath it, you know, it doesn't seem to me that argument, just because they did it before, would make any sense to do it now, because the laws are different. It's the same way, it seems to me, that a building that was done 20 years ago that needed a sprinkler system in it, didn't need a sprinkler system in it now. If you build that, you have to put a sprinkler system in it. That you can't say that because this building.
It has to be brought up to code.
It has to be brought up to
It has
code,
to
and
meet
this is
bylaws.
basically the same
This is a
thing that
new
you're
project.
arguing.
That's
This is an old
understood.
site, it's a new project, it has to conform with the bylaws.
I understand that it would be nice to be able to build something on a lot that's been in the family for a long time, but this doesn't meet the requirements of, I don't think, you know, I'm not knowledgeable as Rebecca or Brian is, but it doesn't seem to me that it meets the requirements of what we expect to protect the wetlands and the species, the people, the animals that live there, and streams, and it's just my opinion, you know, it's.
That's understood, and
Thank you.
you know, this is it's a tight lot, obviously,
Yes,
and you know,
clearly.
we're complying with the regulations and bylaw as much as we can to the maximum extent practicable, which is why we've kept the disturbed area to a minimum, you know, only to allow for construction and installation of system components. And the fact that this is a 3-bedroom, it's not a massive, like 4 or 5-bedroom, single family.
How many bathrooms?
I don't know. This is just it's a house box, it's not.
Right, but if you have a 3-bedroom thing with 3 bathrooms, that affects it, you know. I can't
That's
go into
all
that because
taken-
that's Board of Health stuff, that's not what
And
I.
that's all taken into consideration
But
when
we're-
they do the flow for, you know, under Title V, and that's all taken into consideration. That's
I know,
why they don't
I know.
count
That's not
bathrooms
our-
as bedrooms.
But we're supposed to be, what bothers me mostly is a third of this property is protectable, and it's not, I don't know, it just doesn't seem to me that it's up to what the standards are today, What they were 25 years ago, however old that is one thing. You know, but what it is today seems to me to be nothing. It's fine.
And, yeah, this property has been kept in the family, it hasn't been sold.
I understand that, that's,
They've
I
been paying
agree.
taxes on it for all these years, so
I
they, you know,
agree,
they
but
have,
it's
they
still-
have rights.
It's still
This property.
wetland, even though it's been in the family.
That is
for-
understood, yeah, and that's, you know, why we,
Yeah, I understand.
And a quarter of the house is in the 25-foot do not disturb. I mean, that's against our local bylaw.
I understand that, but again, to have a livable house, and you can't have a narrow
But
house.
our job is to follow the bylaws and the state regulations.
That's understood. That's
So
understood.
whether or not, you know,
Just because it was that way 30 years ago doesn't mean it's that way now. That's,
Right,
that's
but like I
basic.
said, this lot was created pre-bylaw.
Yeah.
So,
But-
but it's
if they
being,
did develop
the
it at the
proposed
time.
construction is current, which has to meet the current regulations.
The
Whether or
lot's
not
been
it was
grandfathered.
purchased
I do
25 or 30
understand
years
that.
ago.
The lot
This is
has
a
been
new project
grandfathered.
that's being proposed. This isn't a renovation or an update or an addition. This is a brand-new project being proposed on a lot that is 100% within buffer zones.
That's understood, but if you deny this project, you'd be denying the homeowner rights to his own property.
As opposed to the homeowner taking over the resource area, which we have to protect.
That's why we're keeping it to the minimum extent practicable to develop this lot.
Were there other questions?
Up to code.
I'm Scott Powell. I live at 100 Nashway Road. I'm also on the Board of Health. I agree with all the comments, that I'm hearing from the commission. I did not vote in favor of approving the Board of Health variance. On this, I really hate to see us shoehorn these houses into lots with all kinds of variances. I think it's changing the nature of the town when we do that. And so I agree with all the comments you made.
We
What was your
also-
name again, just for the record?
It's Scott Powell.
Thank you.
If we make adjustments and we are lenient on certain things, we're setting a precedent. We have to be consistent with every applicant that comes in here, and we have to, hold up to the bylaw, the state regulations, and if we say, oh, it's okay for you to put a house within the 25-foot do not disturb, and then someone else comes in and says, well, why can't I do that? I mean, we can't set that precedence. We have to be consistent and uphold the regulations and the bylaws.
That's understood, but I think in situations such as these, where it is a pre-existing lot, certain exceptions can be made.
But lots change over time. Maybe when the lot was created, the wetland lines could have been totally different than what they are now. Just because of the other houses that have been built in the neighborhoods, wetlands have changed. And the lot lines that were there at the current time could be totally different, and that's why it's reflagged and reevaluated for what it is as of today's date.
It's understood.
Other questions, comments? Comments from the board?
Got
Very
comments.
quiet, Kevin.
All right.
It's a tough situation all the way
I
around.
agree,
We don't make a decision like this lightly at all.
All right. In that case, I'd like to make a motion that we close the public hearing for Lot 31 Nashway Road.
A second.
All those in favor? Aye. What would be our option if I was to deny the request?
So you can do two things.
Go ahead.
You can wait until the next meeting to vote and make a decision, and then we can draft something.
Yeah.
Or you can vote this evening. And so you would be denying the request, approving the request, or approving the request with conditions.
Okay. If it's all right, I would say for the next meeting, let us draft something up.
What about the findings that you sent out? Was
So
that,
that's just a rough draft.
okay. So we'll start from that and, okay.
Yeah, at least I would be able to list reasonings better if we do deny. That will give us a chance to send something around before we can sign off on it, make sure everybody's comfortable and it says what we need to say.
Do we open the hearing next week, or do we just?
No, we just vote.
Would we be able to keep it open and have you guys comment and then close it?
Fortunately, we just voted to close.
So you have to,
I just don't think we have any more comments.
That's,
Untapped.
yeah.
That's gonna change.
I can't see how, I mean, even getting it out of the 25-foot buffer zone, which was Wetlands Protection Act originally, it's still in there, which is really our no-touch that we try to avoid. I can't see how on the lot you could address our concerns of getting it out of the buffer zones. I just don't know how that would be possible. Which is half the
Which is
reason why we
it
close
is.
it, I'm not sure, and again, we have a time crunch tonight, I'm not trying to be, but we only have the library for so many hours, and we do have a bunch of stuff to get through. I don't know that you could have shifted it around any way that would have changed where we come down. If you want to submit something, we will absolutely read it, take it into account. But for now, we've closed it, and I think we have to move on. Sorry. Okay.
thank you.
Thank you. That's it.
What is it?
Okay. The Bolton Conservation Commission will now hold a public hearing under the provisions of Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, and under the Bolton Wetland Bylaw, Chapter 233, to consider the notice of intent filed by Andrew Adams on behalf of the applicant for a proposed new home with three-car garage to be built over existing foundation, built over existing foundation walls. Front of the house will have a porch to connect to the garage, new septic system outside, 100 foot from the resource area, and 2 leaching fields for roof and driveway runoff, also outside the 100 foot area from the resource area. The proposed project to be located at 72 Hudson Road, with a public meeting to be held this evening, beginning now.
Thank you very much.
Sure, I would
Thank
say,
you, Brian. I noticed you have the Bruins shirt on.
yes,
so
yeah, no, I figured we should.
I'd like to speed things up for you.
We only have so many hours at the library, that's not why we're rushing tonight. Would not be a bad.
Good reason.
Yeah. Go ahead,
We're-
please.
Just very quickly, we were out on site, they have started the demolition of the existing home.
Okay.
The foundation, everything's done by the rules, basically, we put up the erosion control that's necessary as a preventative
Yep.
measure. The trees are all marked, no trees were removed, and they were able to demo the 2 accessory buildings and the single-family home, aside from the foundation.
That's correct.
Are you all set with the trees?
Yes.
Okay.
So.
Are we all set with the
if you-
trees?
Well, I'm saying explaining it, if you
Okay.
want to just come up, or if you want to just come up and explain to the board what you're proposing for
Sure.
the project.
Our engineer just pulled in, I don't know if you want to get us started. Andy.
Yeah. You guys have the plan, the architectural plans?
Yeah.
Yeah, so basically, we're trying to keep the existing foundation, we're taking down the old garage,
Yeah.
and we're just gonna rebuild a new 4.5, 3-bedroom house, 4.5 bath, basically. You know, we're trying-
4.5
There's
baths.
3,900 square feet between the 2 buildings.
Correct.
All right, that's fine.
4.5 baths.
Yeah, it's split up, there's one over the garage.
So this is the existing,
Yep.
house,
Right.
the building foundation. There was a garage and a carport that they
It's
demoed.
gone.
So they're talking about
This is gone too.
building on the same footprint, but 2 stories up, and then same thing with this, 2 stories or 3 stories up. So the area, and then the shed we demoed, this accessory structure was demoed. And then the deck's the only new, aside from vertical.
Gotcha. So it looks like, I'm assuming the wetlands coming off this side, right? So,
it's only
and I know
one
this
pond,
is
there's
existing.
no BBW associated with it, so it's the edge of the pond.
Okay, and just like the front. But again, that's existing
Right.
foundation underneath there.
Correct.
And then this comes outside the 50 foot, but is this another? That's 100 foot, but again, that's existing. So the only new coverage would be the deck area, basically.
Correct.
Well, and then we were
Front
proposing
porch.
to do a impervious roadway, correct?
Oh, I think it's gonna be
It's gonna stay gravel?
I believe so. I mean,
Okay.
did you propose
I had
that?
read that it was paved, but I couldn't.
He might have had a paved driveway in there, we've been talking about keeping it gravel if possible.
I'm fine with staying gravel.
There's the pervious cement too, not cement, but the pervious pavement.
Correct.
Well,
So
there's
you probably
dirt
leave
there
it
now.
with an option.
It's just like.
It's all gravel now.
It's all gravel, I think if anything, you might have some asphalt up near the house, so we don't track that in, but most of it will be gravel.
Yeah.
We're trying to keep it really natural, that's why we're keeping this foundation, this stone wall is really nice, it looks over the pond, trying to keep everything more natural. And there's a lot of trees that you saw yesterday that he actually wants to keep a lot of them.
Okay, good,
We just
that was.
I want to keep
that I
more,
raised, that
more
was
than less.
concerned.
Yeah, he
Yeah,
marked
good.
out a lot of them just so we could kind of have a big envelope and
Especially the
see
yellow
about
birds,
it.
you know, the pine, the white pines.
Some of them didn't look that
No, I.
healthy, but
No,
Yeah,
yeah,
some of them-
some of them are rough shape, but
Yeah.
obviously the ones around here that are gonna overhang the house will have to
Right.
snip, but.
nice lot.
yeah, it is.
Yeah.
I was looking forward
So it's
to
all-
it.
Additional deck at that point?
No, that's.
No, this is all here still, this is all here,
Original.
correct, this is all original.
They had like a little picnic area right here.
Yeah.
Right,
At
exactly.
one time, that might have been,
What was it, probably in ancient times,
Yeah.
an ice house or
yeah,
something?
hotels or something like that.
I think it was, yeah,
This
it was
wall
an
looks like
ancient
we're gonna
house.
keep.
In fact, the person who goes to the chain goes back, I own the property at 579 Bolton, and the chain goes back to the same ownership under Samuel Flood, way back in when it was the province of Massachusetts.
Well,
I didn't know that.
So this stone wall, I just want to touch upon that. Are you looking to, is it structurally sound? Are you looking to repair it at all,
I
supplement
like to
it all?
keep it,
So you're
whatever I
just
have to
keeping it the
do.
way it is?
We're
I
keeping
wanna
it the
keep
way it
it,
is. My
yes.
engineer looked at it, he thought it looked fine, but we're gonna do some kind of tests when we get this deck off. But,
All the stone structures are staying as they
Yeah.
are.
Okay.
yeah, to reduplicate all that would be a big thing. You know, then you're gonna basically have a new septic, which is coming out this way,
Right.
you know.
Where
away
is
from
it? Where is it now? Is it
It's
a
going
leaching
over
field?
there.
No, but where is it? Where's the
No, there
I'm
is
sure
one.
we're,
I
yeah,
think
it's probably accessible.
I think it's accessible, to be honest with you, out here.
I think it's this pond right here.
There's an existing well, there's an existing well, I believe it was over here somewhere. We're gonna try to salvage that, we might need a new pump. But that's really it, it's just,
And then the runoff from the roof, I was reading in your proposal as well, in the narrative, is being redirected along the driveway to the leach field as well.
that's
Or two
correct.
separate leach fields.
Yeah, hi.
Hi, how are you?
So you just having a question about the leach field,
Yes,
the driveway and stuff like that.
This is Canayo, my engineer.
Okay.
Yeah, he did all these drawings.
yeah, so we have, here we go. That's the one leaching field here, one over here. So, and that's the septic system. So the roof runoff is going, all of this into this one. This is for all the roof. Yeah. And then the driveway, the way the driveway is
Yep.
going this way, so it'll be a catch basin here, catch basin here, and all that will go into this one.
And this is all on one lot, I'm just trying to.
Yes,
Yeah.
this whole thing
This
is one.
still this is staying and this is come down.
Yeah, and that's all
One
one
was,
jurisdictional to
yeah,
the
this
center,
is
that's
all
all
outside.
outside, yeah.
Used to be airport.
There's also a natural dip here, which takes most of the water here.
For the
And,
traffic that's coming in.
yeah, that's gonna stay the way it is.
Roscoe property is next door.
That's a nice lot.
Yeah, this is, we're gonna build this style of house for, stone facing and then cedar shingles, something that will fit very nicely on that lot.
And then the decking, is that, what's the style of the decking? Is it a typical deck where you just have footings, or is it down to the ground? Is it on the
I think it's
ground?
resting
Is it
on,
up
I
in
mean,
the
it's
air?
resting on this,
Yeah, so it's,
I'm sorry.
Remember, Brett, I think we looked at it, wasn't they just?
The one facing
over top of
the,
it?
This, yeah.
Oh,
this is the
okay.
deck, so the
It's
deck
gonna
is
sit on the
structured
existing structure,
as an
right?
existing stone wall.
Correct.
And we're gonna add couple of piers, that's it.
Okay,
And then there's a stone wall here, it'll
Yes,
sit on.
that's also an existing stone wall.
Exactly.
okay. And then,
It's right here, see, there's a stone wall,
yep,
and then there's another stone wall.
Yeah,
So a bridge over.
it's just decking, there's no structure coming out this way.
No,
No.
just on top of it.
And then, what about this deck?
That's the porch.
That's brand new.
There's a porch
That's the
to
entrance
connect this detached garage to this.
It's gonna be this part here, actually, where you walk from the main house to the garage.
And that's gonna be roofed as well?
Yes.
Like, is it tied in, does it tie in with the,
With the garage.
Correct.
Ties into the garage.
Yep.
And
So
then
you walk
have
up-
like a boardwalk underneath?
Yeah, just like a
or just
boardwalk,
open?
correct.
So it is
It's just-
open?
It is
Open.
open.
Open. I mean, the animals can go through here.
right.
Good,
Right.
make sure. Make sure the bear can find it.
We'll get in that. Some more elevations.
This is all on the lakeside, pond side, a lot of light.
Yes, that was there.
Yes,
It's just like a,
That's it.
Yeah.
you know, and then it was,
Yeah, and
it's
that
gonna stay the
used-
same, and this is.
And that used to be the boathouse, it's an ancient structure, very old, and the walls, the walls supporting it will keep it.
And then did you get the DEP number for this project?
You did today, actually.
Did they have
You need
comments?
that?
I do.
You want me to email you the notice that I got?
Well, they've emailed it to me, but did they have comments on the bottom of that form?
It didn't, I
Okay.
didn't see it, so. These drawings obviously have a lot less trees than will be here, but, you
Yeah.
know, I want to keep as many as we can. I don't, anything that is not a danger to the house, I want to keep it.
Yeah, so that was probably my biggest concern, was you were removing about 20 trees over 12 inch in diameter, and then about 13 less than. I don't see a reason, aside from the ones that are directly
The one at the
adjacent to
front,
the
right.
structure, the one
Yeah,
at the
these two
front,
here,
that
these-
one over by the shed, if you're
Right.
looking to put the structure there, the one by this, but if you're not building anything there, I see. no
Well,
reason
I'm
to
putting,
do that.
we're replacing that.
Oh, you
It's
are?
called a
Yeah.
boathouse, we're putting a
Okay.
prefab shed in here.
My little note. So, and then what about the shed in the back? This one?
The garage?
No.
Oh, that's gone.
That's gone.
That's gone, you're not
Yeah, that's
replacing
gone,
that? Okay.
It's gone.
So, again, my concern was, because most of the largest diameter trees that you have are those large white pines, one of which
I
is
want to
already
keep as
snapped
many
the
of those
top.
as I can.
One of them, I would definitely be fine with you removing, because it looks like it's gonna come down, or the wind's gonna blow some
Which
heavy
one is that?
branches.
Anything which will affect the roof.
The size of
Either
There's a big one right here.
this one
I don't-
or that one.
This is, I don't think this is a pine, this is a big overhang, I think it's a,
Yeah, that's not it.
an elm, or is that one okay to? I-
So that's, I'm just saying to the commission what I was seeing, and typically the commission likes to, or past projects, they like to see the canopy maintained versus taken
Which I
out,
would
which
like
it
to
sounds
do.
like you're amenable to.
Yep.
So I don't know if the commission has any input on that, but what I was just saying was, I think out of the 13 small diameter trees, ones that are directly adjacent to the home, or the existing home, I could obviously see removing,
Yeah,
but the
these two
smaller
that
ones,
are
I don't
right-
see a need.
Yeah.
These
No,
two,
that's
yeah,
not a problem.
okay.
Yeah.
That, I mean, those are the, that, and then there's a big, I can't remember where it's rooted, but it's this one or that one that really overhangs on the house. Other than those, that's set, I'm pretty comfortable with anything
Probably
you
this
want.
one you're
Yeah,
thinking
yeah.
of.
There were a couple of cedars that were,
Yeah.
is that?
I want to,
three
I mean, there's
cedars?
one cedar I'd like to keep, but I don't know if it's gonna be in the way of the front
There were some
door.
big cedars in there that were.
Yeah,
Those
I think
I
all
wanna
these-
keep the
I think
seats.
all these are gonna have to go. But there's
some
a,
cedars
most of these
down
over
here.
here are probably gonna stay.
Okay.
Like these couple big ones probably will have to go.
The sick ones, we can take the ones down that are,
Yeah, so
the
that, again,
deciduous
this is.
trees that are dead, we can take those down, right?
Yeah, and this is again what the commission's reviewing, is, so you presented, which I'm happy you listed, all of the trees that potentially you'd like to remove, then come back and said, we'd actually like to remove less than that, that's benefit, but it's up to the commission to determine what's able to be removed.
So what would be the best way to come to a final determination? Have you walk the site and just?
Well, I walked the site,
Yeah,
so
me too.
Oh,
I'm comfortable, like I said, and I'll repeat again, and it sounds like you guys really aren't touching anything over here unless it's dead.
Right.
There was a couple, this one, and the smaller ones closer to the edge of the pond. I don't see a need to remove those
Good.
aside from the
Fine.
view. No offense, I'm
No.
more concerned
No,
with
fine.
that bank staying together.
right.
But, and that's sort of my feeling, but aside from that, it seemed like you guys were pretty selective.
Yeah.
And the trees not getting removed.
Yes, they're all
The
tag
ones-
and mark.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe we can make another site visit before we take them down, go through it
Yeah.
with
that would
them,
be
with him
beneficial.
too,
That'd be a good idea.
just to make sure we're all. on
See,
the
I have
same
a
page.
question for you. You said that the well was over here somewhere, but it says right on here that the well's really close
That's
to
what I
that.
meant. That's what I
That's where, are you gonna keep that well?
Yes.
We're planning on it, yeah.
Okay. I thought you mentioned it was over here. It says,
Wellhead?
well location from whatever.
I've seen it over there.
Oh,
Yeah, we
Must
had
be
to
good
keep
here.
100 feet.
Yeah,
So
from the septic.
we
Right,
have a
right.
dimension.
But he said it mentioned, I just
Yeah,
wanted.
yeah.
I'm sorry,
no,
That's all.
that wasn't
and
my general area over there.
Yeah.
And then a Board of Health would probably grandfather.
They're
It's gonna be so far from the
Have you
lot.
been
Yeah,
to
too.
the Board of Health yet?
Yeah, I don't know how far from that.
This has been
What's that?
submitted to
Have you
Board of
been
Health.
before the Board of Health?
Yeah.
Do you have
We
already?
already submitted.
Okay.
Did you hear anything from Mr. Brooks?
I mean, we haven't been in front of the board.
No, but you've heard,
Presented to
submitted
somebody.
to them.
Yeah,
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I met with Bill and all that.
Okay.
that's 100 feet.
Yeah, I think
The well,
yeah,
we wanted to, that's how we kept it.
yeah. I'm not sure if the well meets the, and again, it's
It's
none of our
none
business,
of
so
our
it does
business.
not matter if it makes it the.
I just wanted to make sure it was on the,
From
No,
the
we
lot
had
lines
to,
and all
that was
but-
Board of Health
Yeah,
requirement.
yeah,
that has to be
exactly.
done.
It's nothing we're
We have
gonna
enough
be concerned
problems.
with, yeah. Other questions? So I did not go on the site visit.
Erosion control?
Yeah,
So there's, the silt fence or just snow fence?
Silt fence
Silt
and,
fence.
and water on,
No, that's already been done, right?
in front of this,
Yeah, we saw
that.
along here too?
Yeah.
And then that's what that
The whole
orange,
thing, all
Oh,
the way
that's,
around.
The orange
oh,
silt
that's what
fence.
it is, okay.
and then the shroud wattles.
Yeah, they did a good job putting it in.
So, let me back up, now that we're on the subject of erosion control. Earthwork,
So, keeping the old foundation,
so no earthwork.
no earth there, we're putting a new foundation here, but that's over here.
Yeah.
And it's only really frost walls, we're not digging a full foundation, so there
Yeah.
really won't be a lot. And then obviously they'll be pulling stumps and stuff like that, but we'll be,
Why are you pulling stumps?
I mean,
The ones which
Means
are
stop
cutting.
cutting?
we're not allowed to take them to one of the ones we're cutting down, we gotta keep from that, can we grind
So-
it down, subgrade?
So, I guess my question is, and the reason why I ask is because, again, typically within the resource area, the commission doesn't allow removal of trees. And when they do allow removal of trees, there's no stump grinding because then you still get, it's holding in the slope
Okay.
for
So you have to
grades
grind it
that are
right
there.
down to the,
So you don't grind.
Can't grind.
You
oh, no,
cut
I mean,
it.
you have to cut it
Yes.
very close to
Yep.
the
The
ground.
top.
So again, that's something up to the commission, whether they want to allow that or not.
Okay, I mean, I guess,
But I get,
I don't think it'd be a big issue,
Yes.
only on a couple of these big ones over here, maybe?
How close to the foundation are they?
Oh, these are going right in the
Yeah,
board.
This one's like,
Yeah,
this
those are-
is like on the
Yeah.
foundation.
Fine decay, they're gonna end up with sinkholes.
Single and termites.
That's what I'm thinking.
I don't know, that
Over
could
here,
be.
if you- if you
Up
still
to
put
the
it-
commission.
Yeah.
I get that, or you don't?
No, I'm just saying, if the stumps, we had a lot of stumps left in our old house, I mean, it brings in
Right.
termites,
Yeah,
they
yeah.
eventually rot anyway, so.
They're going to decay.
I think that would be
holes.
something good just to review, if we could go look at the tag trees, and then, I I'm not totally, I understand the erosion, but then leaving stumps as they break
Yeah.
down and bring in more bugs, and
Yeah.
it turns into such a,
But we should go look at it, we've got it, somebody suggested another
Snowball.
site visit.
Yeah, we're cool with that.
Alright.
Like we said, we're flexible about it. Like she's saying, I would say the only ones that we're gonna be putting this deck structure with a couple extra footings, maybe,
Those,
maybe getting those removed, just because she said, you know, decay down the line could cause that to sink, but.
I noticed that there were a lot of trees in here that didn't look like they should come down anyway.
That's, I mean, that's
Right,
why we're gonna
no,
keep
that's
those,
why we're gonna
keep
keep
all
all
those.
Do you think it would be beneficial for you to, since you've commented, oh, we might not be removing all the trees that we've tagged, for you to go back out and sort of
Tag the ones that I.
Update.
untag the
Yeah.
ones you're
Yeah,
looking at,
yeah,
not
yeah.
remove, so then
We could do
it's
that.
clear and
Sure,
it's like.
absolutely.
We could do that for sure. And I
I
can
guess
let
that
you
would-
know, and you guys can maybe.
Just take those tags
So we'll take the red tags off and put new,
We'll put the ones in
We'll
trees.
take the red tags off the
Yeah,
ones that
like
we're
ones
gonna
to
keep,
aim.
and then we keep the.
And if you want, if you think about it, and you somehow want to mark the ones that you'll want to remove, I'm sure like these, you want to remove the roots or to
Sure.
grind those down as opposed to some that might
Sure.
need to come down, but you might be.
What I'll do is I'll put
perfect.
like an extra ring of tape on the.
Yeah,
bottom
just
of those
something like that would
ones.
be perfect,
Sure,
yeah.
sure.
Can I ask, is anybody here to comment on 72 Hudson Road tonight? Okay. So it sounds like we're gonna try to get out there, especially just to look at the tree cuttings. I don't think we had a lot of questions on the actual design itself and where everything is. It seems like most is going over existing. So with your permission, would you be fine if we continue this until our next meeting? And
Well,
we'll,
we can delay.
When's the next
Is
meeting?
it possible
May
for us to
7th.
start, I mean, put the tree issue to one side and start, you know, working on the house itself?
Well, in order to do that, the commission would have to vote, they would have to close the public hearing, and they would have to vote on what you presented. Now, if you want to separate the two, you'd have to refile for just the tree.
Oh, I see,
So I
okay.
think administratively, you wouldn't want to do that, and cost
When can we get
effectively,
back in front of you again?
May 7th,
May 7th?
yeah.
Okay, all right. All right, I guess it's
It's
two-
probably gonna work
2
out
weeks.
anyways,
All right, 2 weeks.
just because of the building
Okay, sure,
process,
let's do
you
it
know.
that way.
okay, okay.
Well,
All right.
that'll give us enough time to get out there.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
And you to fix,
Okay.
figure out which trees you want to
I
keep.
agree.
Okay.
It's only
Yeah.
two problems.
Yeah, we'll kind of
Perfect.
definitely-
And we can take care of it then.
8:30.
8:30? Okay, in that case, I would like to make a motion that we continue the public hearing for 72 Hudson Road to our next meeting, May 7, 2019, at 8:30 PM in the Houghton Building.
Second.
You got the plan on this?
All those in favor?
Aye.
So continue. Okay.
Thank you very
We'll
much.
see you, yeah, we'll see you in 2 weeks. We'll
Thank
get out there
you.
before
Appreciate it very
then.
much.
No, thank you guys.
Hope you can get your third period, Brian.
Yes.
That's your Celtics fan?
What's that?
Watching these Bruins.
Celtics on play?
What game 7, Joe?
You can get a week. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Who was the engineer?
And, oh.
The other guy in the middle was the construction guy?
Probably the contractor and the engineer, yeah.
So the next one we have is a certificate.
Want me to officially open it?
Yeah.
No, because it's closed, it just issued a
Oh.
certificate. So it's just addressed.
This is the Sawyer Road.
Yep.
Beautiful.
So originally, so this is known as 0 Sawyer Road now, so it's 277 Sawyer Road. And we went out probably a year ago, just about a year and a half ago, to look at the site. Natural Heritage said there's no take, no conditions imposed on the property from them. Now, we had imposed conditions because most of the grading was originally proposed to be within resource area. There wasn't gonna be walkout basement, there was gonna be regular foundation. And now they have pulled everything out of the buffer area. Let me just make sure.
We have a copy of that?
Not in your file.
Okay.
I apologize.
Oh, well, 0, well, originally it was 0. Now 277.
Is this on the uphill side of
I'm
Waterwater?
trying to picture it.
So just look at this.
This is on like the Nishway farm side? No?
Sawyer Road.
Yeah.
Yeah. 'cause
It's all the way towards the Berlin.
Railroad, right? Isn't that near your road?
Okay, okay.
So we received a letter from the engineer, just explaining it. In March 2017, an order of conditions was issued by the Conservation Commission for work at number 277 Sawyer Road, DEP file number 1120648, based on the proposed subsurface sewage disposal system plan revised 2617. A copy of the plan is attached for your reference. On that plan, earthwork was proposed within the buffer zone of a bordering vegetative wetland. The order was recorded at the Worcester County Registry of Deeds. In September 2017, the owner revised the plan in order to move the proposed house about 20 feet easterly away from the BBW and made most of the rear basement a walkout. The result of the revision is that the previously proposed earthwork within the BBW is no longer required. It is specifically requested the commission issue a certificate of compliance since the previously proposed earthwork is no longer in a jurisdictional area. To date, the house and leaching area have been constructed. Attached for your reference is a copy of the subsurface plan, 12/17/18, which depicts the leaching system, recording data, and existing house. And then just requesting that if the commission has any questions, to contact them. That should say 2018, not 2016.
So,
So this,
it's basically just this, right? It was
Existing.
grading that came into the BBW, was that it?
right, and now
Grading
it
up.
did not.
And they ended up moving the
So
house.
the house is moved this way,
Yeah.
and it actually, it's a relatively steep slope, they left the erosion control there. Oh, excuse me, this is where it shows this little dashed area, you can see it in the
Yes.
background there. That was the previously proposed, and this is where they've kept it. So they've kept everything here, they've done no work within resource areas. It is upland from the adjacent upland resource areas. They still need to plant grass or seed the area once they finish the grading, I think, over here. But aside from that, I had no issues. I went out on site. There's not any movement of material even towards this resource area nor this way. So I had no issues with it.
It's not just like a river of water coming down the hill?
No, no, which I was surprised, and with that, you'd see a movement of, or migration of
Trenching.
material, or washout, and it's not because there's a lot of rock that is along that slope. Yeah.
Questions? Anybody in the audience like to comment on 277 Sawyer? All right. Think we would go ahead and issue it unless see a good reason not to. I'd like to make a motion that we issue a certificate of compliance for 277 Sawyer Road.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Are you ready for us?
Yep.
All right, the Bolton Conservation Commission will now hold a public hearing under the provisions of Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, and under the Bolton Wetland Bylaw, Chapter 233, to consider the request for determination of applicability filed by Leroy Millet on behalf of the applicant for the proposed removal of vegetation surrounding a home located at 45 Wheeler Road. The public meeting to begin this evening, right now.
Would you like to come forward?
Sure.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, Woody. Nice to see you.
Very good. Have a seat.
If you want, yeah, please. So, we have, there's not enough.
No. So
Okay.
there should be a site visit report. So we went out on site, yesterday?
Yeah, yesterday.
To review the area, and the filing is to cut and remove some trees that we have a letter from, or an email rather, from the arborist that came out to look at the property, who will be conducting the work, to my understanding, as long as it's approved. And in addition to that, did your insurance company come out to?
They didn't
talk to
come
them?
out, but recently I did have one of these similar trees fall down and hit the
Right.
front of the house and kind of explode in the front yard. But they didn't come out for a visit, I didn't file a claim.
Okay, so basically the protection and public safety of the single-family home structure and the shed or garage structure to the rear of the property. As we were walking the property at the site visit, there is also sort of, while the arborist is out there working on the property, they're looking to remove some of the more mature white pines and mature trees to encourage successional growth and get the hardwoods back. So I think the thought is great and the insight is wonderful. When I was walking out there, I did mention that it may be beneficial to talk to the service forester, because it may benefit both them and the town to sort of work on a forestry plan. But if it's sort of a large scale cutting, and then the method of which it will be removed seems to be by, no, I'm not gonna think.
Crane and boom.
Thank you, crane and boom, I was thinking.
So
boom.
staged
Yes.
in the open yard area and, reaching out no more than 100 feet to kind of selectively top them and take them out in segments, so there's no kind of treading on the forest floor, there's no incidental contact with any of the surrounding forest areas. It should be clean and just removing down the stumps and also leaving the stumps in place and not treating them or grinding them.
Okay. So I was not out at the site. Is there any questions, comments, thoughts from those who were, or in general?
Well, my main thought was that the ones that were, there shouldn't be any issue about the ones that were gonna impact the house, but some of them clearly didn't impact the house in the back of the yard, but that was just my opinion. I thought it was a good idea to get somebody in there to figure out how expensive, some of those trees were out there a ways, and they were pretty big. And I'm not sure that, were they in the resource area when we were out there?
There were
somewhere?
some right on the
There were
edge of the
some right on the
wetlands.
Yeah, right on the edge of the wetlands, there's pretty big pine trees that are out there, but I have to agree, the parts that would come down on your house in the middle of the night,
Yeah.
Yeah.
no problem with that whatsoever.
Those are 95% of my concern, or 98% of my
Yeah.
concern. The other things would be
The
incidental.
stuff in the back, I'm not sure that,
I would say if we could keep some of the stuff that's in the wetland that will not,
Right.
hit the house if
Yeah.
it comes down. Would
There's a
be
lot-
nice to try to salvage that.
and there was a lot back there that didn't, a lot of the things that you wanted to cut down didn't seem to be, and I don't live there, so I don't know. But
Sure.
I know the ones in the front of the house that were down in that little, where the other one was broken off, that,
That whole front area.
Yeah.
Not even a concern.
Not even a
in my
concern.
mind.
That is my primary concern.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm certainly
That's about
amenable
me.
to moving back the cutting from some of those further ones out and closer to the way.
yeah, that's my opinion of those ones out there, until they start to topple, and they're not gonna hit your house. If they start to topple over, maybe that's would be an issue then, but,
Yeah, that was a secondary objective, was to, let the hardwood understory kind of reestablish and have a more, balanced habitat. But again, my first objective is safety for us in the house.
yeah, that's mine too. That would be the thing.
It's a smart call.
Sure.
So don't have a problem with it, but, and the bears and the deer and the antelope and whatever else is in the backyard.
They would voice any concerns.
They're not too scared
We
about
haven't
the
gotten a
trees.
letter yet. Is anybody in the audience tonight to comment on 45 Wheeler?
Okay.
Now, are these trees tagged?
Yes,
They were
they're
tagged,
flagged,
yeah.
But I would go ahead with the, if I might just say, that the front of the yard wouldn't be a problem, but the ones in the back, I would,
So do you wanna do the same thing that we just discussed for 72 Hudson, where maybe reflag?
Yeah.
Remove the flag that maybe you're amendable to removing, and then do a secondary site?
I think that's a good idea.
Okay.
Yeah, and just to clarify.
Hopefully it won't blow down before then, so.
There are a few in the back that are within striking distance for sure that I would want to do so it's not the
Yeah,
whole
so-
back area.
Yeah.
But I understand that the depth of it, how far back it goes and how close to the.
If you don't mind, that would be a good idea, is to reflag them and just,
Yeah, just
Go up
pull,
there.
or cut the ones off the trees that you don't wanna.
so you don't want to, take it in, we'll go back out and take a quick look and,
So the other thing, because you're not building new structures, like 72 Hudson Road, is sort of two options. The commission can close and vote, and then contingent upon a secondary site visit approving the flag trees, or just wait until the secondary site visit and address it at the next meeting. So it would be continued versus closed and voted on.
So it would be closed and voted on with the condition that we'll reassess the flag trees.
Correct. So
yeah, that's what I
I
said.
think that's fine, right?
Yeah, I do.
The flag trees in the back, that way if he chooses to remove the ones out front right now, then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good idea.
Let's just do the ones
Because
in
it
the
would
front.
still, I don't want to be
Yeah.
responsible if the tree comes down.
Right, that's what I'm saying,
Yeah. And part of it was the arborist, and there are some, cost and logistical benefits to doing it as one, full day.
Of course.
Versus breaking it up, so
Right.
I would probably just wanna wait to get to go ahead and do it all at once.
Okay.
If that works.
So the windstorm's on you.
Yeah, well, I've been accepting that like.
For years now,
Every
anyways,
time.
nothing will change.
Some of them have identifiable hazards, but, there's, I don't know.
Well, I noticed in the back, there were a couple of them in the
Yeah.
back that were dead. So,
If it's a matter of a few weeks, I'll
Yeah, I
take
know.
chances.
but the ones in the front, if the weather report was being really stormy and you got your guys out there and you took them down, I don't think anybody's gonna complain, maybe
You're not going to complain.
I'm not gonna complain.
That's fair. Okay.
But-
Okay.
We're basically just trying to draft that up.
Sure.
So, quickly, while that's happening, I'm gonna make the motion that we close the public hearing for the request for determination of applicability for 45 Wheeler Road. Anybody want a second?
45.
Second.
All right.
There you go.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, so closed. And then have the motion in a minute, hopefully.
Are you the original owner of that house? No.
No, it was built in '94, there's been two other owners before me.
Oh, yeah.
do we want a second condition as in no vehicles within so many feet of the resource area, or no?
No, we don't wanna drag bulldozers through there. or
Just
anything
do-
like
But I'm just saying to or,
Yeah.
to,
If it's there, you can
I'm
go,
good.
and if it's not there, you can't, so.
Yeah, I'll personally make sure they don't do that, but it's all.
I know, I know.
Yeah, yeah, no, yeah, if we,
If you put it in there, I'm okay with it.
no,
you could either say no within or vehicles must stay within maintained lawn area, because you do have lawn to the rear there.
Yeah.
I think that's what you were talking about.
Yeah,
referring to.
they are gonna attach them with a crane and boom and swing
Right.
everything out to like the open driveway and yard
Yeah.
areas, so they're not planning on having any vehicles out into the woods at all, essentially.
Okay.
so if we said
Which
that.
was one of the more attractive things, why I went.
Yeah.
with that.
So they're not.
Yeah,
Because
right.
other people later down about driving with a skidder,
that. So they gotta drive a big crane in there,
Uh,
up your driveway that
but we
raises
said,
up 100 feet, and, you
the
know,
vehicles,
good luck.
thanks.
that's basically
Take
the,
pictures.
stick to existing lawn, but, the vehicles, all vehicles and equipment remain upon existing lawn driveway. You know, like they have to go a little off and go on, but yeah, just as a general guideline. Good. Okay. All right. I'd like to make a motion that we have a negative, that we have find a negative, no, that we issue a -3 determination for the determination of applicability for 45 Wheeler Road, that the work described in the request is within the buffer zone as defined by the regulations, but will not alter an area subject to protection under the Act. Therefore, said work does not require the filing of a notice of intent, subject to the following conditions. 1, contingent upon approval of flag trees established by letter from Conservation Department. And 2, all vehicles and equipment shall remain on maintained lawn and/or roadway. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So approved. Okay. Rebecca will let you know how you can get that information. But should be all set. We'll send another visit to come take a look, but other than that, be good.
Thank you.
Can I drive your tractor around?
Sure.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's fire it up. No problem. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's a nice tractor.
Like an old one or?
No, it's a brand
We saw a
new
lot of
John
good
Deere.
loot
Yeah.
out yesterday.
Huh?
A lot of good loot, or a lot of things that could use on properties.
So coming before us, so actually we can sort of wait until next meeting, but briefly I'll brush upon it. So before we received the filing for an abbreviated notice of resource area delineation, we had received a demo permit application for, it seems to be an old sugar shack and well house type structure on the corner of Farm Road and Berlin Road, which is a farm field currently, or a haying field currently. And they're looking to remove those structures. They filed the ANRAD. We went out, took a look at the site as we were doing the other site visits, and asked them to provide 4 more testing areas, not necessarily adjacent to these structures, but they've stated that they're waiting to remove the structures anyways until after the ANRAD, ANRAD's been addressed. So that's just, I guess, something coming up now versus something we need to make a decision on. But by next meeting, that will be necessary to vote on, just so that they can get that rolling if the commission is fine with it. And it's more so establishing proper erosion controls because it's in very close proximity to the resource area, if not right on the edge of the actual wetland itself.
It's a steep drop too, doesn't it?
Yes.
That's right, yeah.
It looks like a running brook in there somewhere or something like that.
It is.
I think I remember some history behind it.
Yeah, you can see this looks like an old sugar shack when you go by. It's right beside the road practically.
And then we have Marco Hagan over there for Craftsman Village. He has an informal discussion item associated with a request to install a deck on one of the units. So I don't know if you want to come forward and just give a brief overview.
Brief.
How are you?
Good.
Good.
It's 2-0 Bruins.
Oh, is it? Nice, nice.
End of-
Yeah, I was gonna say, are you so lucky?
I
Oh,
have
They ain't over yet.
That's it. I took a lot just to get it. So, I had been.
He'll be back, he'll be back.
Yeah. Well, actually, I should, so this should be the end of it, so, just a couple of copies
Yeah.
I had, if you guys, you have as well, so I just printed out some larger versions of it. On the last page, might help put it into context, this is the last section of the site. If you look at the properties, we kind of started at about 7 o'clock, went to 9 o'clock, went to 11 o'clock. That's all done. These homes are all just about finished to the front. And then the lighted section is the last phase. All the foundations are in. We've got 4, 5, and 6 framed up, and we're moving towards working on 1, 2, and 3. But the foundations are installed. The request is for the people at Unit 1, which is, it's one of the closer units to the wetland. And then from there, if you want to zip back to the front page, that blows it up a little bit. That they're asking, this is similar to, we did a unit over on the other side, over here, just that the way that the homes are designed, this unit is actually on a slab, just the way that the site is and the groundwater was, so they've asked to have a small porch that would be private on the side of the home. I kind of, second page, located where it would be kind of coming out the kitchen. So we were hoping to locate it, it would be outside the 20-foot offset that we haven't infringed upon anywhere. I did advise them that it would be proposed to be open underneath. There's no stairs from the deck down, nor would we have any lattice or anything around it, based on the conversations we had. On the other side is a previous request. And relatively straightforward from that. We have some footings to put in, that would be about the only work. The area, it's all exposed now. We're not going to be affecting any existing vegetation. We'd be able to get the footings in and then be doing, landscaping work and such right along with everything else that we'd be doing on the site. So we are outside the silt fence and hay bales that are existing, have been there since the beginning. But it is a change, so it is respectfully requested to make the modification.
How high off the ground is it?
It won't be that high, actually. This is a slab, it's sloping down a little bit, so it might end up being probably 110 down to, I'm seeing 107, so 3 or 4 feet, not substantial.
Refresh my memory. How was this maintained back here? As far as, is it mowed, is it big enough to mow, it's like?
No, they won't, no, they won't. We're gonna have fencing that's gonna run right along the edge of the 25-foot
Yeah.
line, which is this. So that was part of the order, so we'll be putting in, I think a split rail fence is what we have designated to delineate the, obviously the 25-foot buffer. There'll be lawn area in here. There really won't be much beyond here because we've got a little retaining wall here, so it'll probably just be mulched and then go into, into lawn, into the broader area over there. And the other reason for that, Rebecca had asked, we had relocated the well, which was over here. That was the other reason that I just wanted to be able to show it on this lot, just to put it in the context for the space. So, and I know you were out and had inspected the site at that point in time. That was this winter. So,
Non-covered deck?
non-covered,
Just an open deck?
Just open deck.
Right, and that's the same regular slats on the floor.
Yeah, we do tracks, so
Yeah.
everything is the frame.
Gap and-
Yeah.
Questions? In the past, we just let it happen as a field amendment. It seemed to me like that would be the way to go this time. I don't know if you have stronger thoughts or think something else would be better.
So it doesn't encroach on any of the buffer zones or anything else like that? does it?
No, I mean, we're within the 100 feet.
right.
We're not encroaching within the 25.
Right.
And we're not,
That's what I
we're not
meant.
exposing anything that isn't, just,
Yep.
exposed right now.
Yeah.
So there's no additional clearing, there's no vegetation that's being taken out. It's a request by the buyer, and we said we'll do it, subject to you guys, so.
So you're blaming us?
No, I'm
Not yet.
I'm not blaming anybody, I'm requesting, I just.
And what would have been there if there wasn't a deck?
Just windows, and lawn.
Lawn.
I mean, a small hut, lawn, whether it's mulch in that area, so. So, let's just have windows instead of the deck. So the homes, the way that they're designed, we've got the front porches, which is kind of public space, so we actually made some changes to a lot of the units to try to get a small amount of private space. So that's really what, this intent is by the buyers. Because it's a slab, we have a little less flexibility of what we could do, so that was kind of the genesis of how we got to that. If that helps. Yeah, and this is, the last, essentially the last house, so. So I won't be back asking for it.
Don't
Well,
say it
you'll
out
be
loud.
back.
Last time I never said never.
That's true, that's true.
I think I started saying it, then I said, no, wait a minute, we got another phase, so I'm never gonna say never. So I think this will be my last request, whether any residents come back for stuff, they're on their own story. But
Is anybody here tonight to comment on Craftsman Village? Yes.
I'm just laughing because I don't feel like.
Your thoughts still?
Because it was approved on the opposite side of the property, I think it's fine. If it rains, it's gonna still percolate through. You have the space underneath, it's not creating more foundation, so it's creating footings. You're already in a disturbed area, you're within the limit of work, so it's outweighing that with, I think, whether you want that structure there or you just want it to be ground. And again, it is all within the 100-foot buffer, but because it was approved on the other side, based on just that, I don't foresee an issue.
If we were to say it's fine, best to just let them do this appeal amendment?
I would, and then show it, because that was, again, the decision on the opposite
That's
side, so
right.
just keeping with the precedents, and then just establishing these changes within the as-built. When you come before us for a request for a certificate of compliance, noting these changes and showing them on that document. That would be my suggestion.
What are you gonna build it out of? We're just,
We use tracks.
What?
Tracks?
Yeah,
What's tracks?
Composite.
The decking itself
Oh, yeah.
is composite, the
oh, yeah,
frame.
like we use that on the
The frame is pressure treated, but the decking itself and the rails are all composite.
So,
it'll-
snow on it's not gonna hurt anything.
No.
you know, so.
No, these, we've pretty much shifted to everything being as maintenance free as
Yeah,
possible.
okay.
For everybody's benefit, long-term benefit, yeah.
That's what it is, a little roll call vote, yes. Yes, meaning you'd be fine with this, with the deck as proposed and being at its field amendment. No, you prefer that it wasn't done. So, roll call vote, I'll start, Lori?
Yes.
All right, Emily, Kip, Jeffrey?
Yes.
I say yes as well.
So I'll write just a memo reflecting that,
That'd
and
be
then
great.
you have it on file.
Yeah, and then we'll make sure the asphalt when everything is in, and we'll speak to everyone again with, we're finishing up just some of the infrastructure on that last phase, so it's the last part. So we can get that done, we get the walkways in and all that stuff, so we are just about done. So, thank you very much for your consideration, as always, and, to nothing. All right, thanks again, have a great day.
I notice you're putting the site inspection logs on very nice picture here.
Again,
Yeah.
something here. The last thing I printed was the signs for the.
Very nice, very nice. Did you
Yeah,
notice that?
it's like a paper in my director's office.
It's different paper than us for some reason.
To bring your attention.
Good to the bus, yeah. Did everybody have a chance to look through the minutes?
Yep.
All right, I'd like to make a motion that we approve our minutes from our March 19th, 2019 meeting and April 2nd, 2019 meeting as drafted and submitted.
Oh, we
Please.
have everyone, so you can do that.
Yes, we do, we
Great.
have, yeah. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye? Yeah. last time I hold over. Sorry.
No, it's fine, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I'm like, before you add the both together. Jeff, you, or Kip had the same.
Jeff?
Kip. So the two updates, well, did anyone get a chance to look at the land use policy? Again,
Nope.
any changes from about 2 to 3 meetings ago?
Nope.
Okay, so I'll send it back.
Can you send that? Yeah, I don't,
Yeah, I'm sorry, I was away. I did not answer it, and I know I've been the worst at saying I will and I'm not.
No,
No, it's a
so
problem,
we'll put
but I would
that
like to get
on
on
2
it.
meetings, because next meeting is in tax.
Yes.
And then letter of support to Sudbury.
Which I wrote again yesterday, in one more paragraph, I don't know if I'll get it to you somewhere
Okay.
Look forward to seeing it.
before it's too late.
When did
what was the land use policy?
They're battling head sources when it comes down to it. So, yeah, it's just
as much as they can get, and they can get it.
Using it for things like that, okay.
So the
It's under
updates.
Yeah. That's it took a year and a half, it's been in one.
So the update. I received correspondence from Walter Erickson, 747 Long Hill Road. And the update was, at the time, and I apologize, I don't have the date on the top of my mind, was that they were waiting for the weather, and that their wetland scientist was gonna go back out, assess again, now that things are growing, make sure things are living, and then write us another updated report. We have not obviously received that report, and we have not received the secondary update, which I had requested from him following the previous conversation of him saying there was no update, we were waiting for the weather, since we had had some dry weeks in between then and now. In addition to that, they had recently sent us the receipts associated with the soil that was brought in and the plantings that were done, that we had requested a while back. So those have at least come to fruition, and they do match up with what was required. It may be beneficial for the commission to maybe inquire or start thinking about a third-party review now that we're in spring. I can put that as a formal meeting item as a vote if that's what the commission is leaning towards. I would encourage it, since we're sort of waiting on their timeline associated with their wetland scientist, who doesn't seem to be as receptive, but I don't know if that's a client situation or if it's just they're working on so many other projects. I don't know what the situation is, but if the commission does want a third-party review, I know they would be working on our timeline and our requests.
And who pays for the third-party review?
The
Is that-
applicant.
Okay.
If we were to vote on that at our next meeting, does it need to be publicly announced for us to vote on it? Or is it
Yes.
something we
So it
we
needs to be
can't vote on
established as a
tonight?
vote in the agenda.
Okay,
But the commission can certainly, because it's listed as a discussion item, the commission can share their thoughts on fulfilling that next time without saying that you're going to vote yes or no. So your thoughts on the matter can be discussed, but not a decision made, basically, at this meeting.
What's the downside?
The downside of getting it,
Yeah.
there's
There's no
none,
problem.
aside from costing the applicant money, which they're costing time to be.
So
No.
their wetland
They're wetland
engineer,
scientists.
we're having trouble communicating with?
No, so the issue is they've provided us with one report. And we've asked for a secondary report to prove that, okay, things are growing properly and it's the right
Right, we
soils,
haven't gotten
and now
that
the
yet.
snow's gone. No, we haven't gotten that
Yeah.
yet. We also have continued to have issues with the developer
Yeah, obviously.
and correspondence from them, obviously. So by doing a third-party review, it would be, I believe, to the town's benefit, because then they're working on our timeline, we're not waiting for them. And we can get these analysis done in the meantime.
Yeah, good.
And then if they have other reports that come in, we can review those.
Yeah.
As we're
Okay.
working towards, again, still that timeline, town meeting, and then after town
It
meeting.
just gives us a second opinion too, right?
Yep.
Basically.
Yep, and I think more data to supplement what we already have, I guess, in terms of eventually pulling the bond after town meeting.
I would say put it for a vote next meeting.
Yeah.
Anybody oppose that idea?
No.
I don't know if we need to vote that, but why don't we go ahead and put it on the agenda?
The next meeting.
Yeah, in our next public meeting. And that gives them 2 more weeks too, so they've had more than enough time.
Yep.
If it gets to about that night. Yeah, yeah.
We've been trying,
Just out of curiosity,
bigger
do
matches.
we pay the review and then wait to get paid back by the
No,
sheriff?
no.
Okay.
When does it come out of the bond?
No, so the bond is for if they can't do the, well, I shouldn't say no. So planning board has allowed, I don't know on this project, but on previous projects, for the third party review to be paid out of the bond that's already held. So that's an option, so long as they prove that. In terms of, but that's different from taking the bond and acting on the bond. So acting on the bond would be basically kicking them off the job, and now the town's gonna hire someone separate to do the work. But they can authorize, in accordance with whatever the commission approves, use of those bond funds towards a third-party review. Or at least that's been the practice in other departments.
That assures that they'll get paid.
Yes.
Important.
So what is our timeline to closing on this? We discussed this, what, a month or 2 ago?
Closing on this, you mean,
I mean, we were giving,
Bringing it to fruition.
We were giving the developer a certain amount of time to prove that
Right.
he had
so we are on the
completed the
same
work.
timeline as planning board. And I don't have the date in front of me, but I'm pretty sure we said June, so basically after
So
town
it was,
meeting.
Right, so is it early June or late June?
June
Do you
1st.
remember that?
June
Or was it June
Last
first?
day of neighbors and
So
first.
he's
Yeah.
basically got a month to finish anything he
Yes.
was gonna get done. Okay.
Which
And we set that
it's
because of.
done. So he says, and the other portion of the update was that Ducharme Dills was working on the as-built. So that's another thing that I'm waiting to review. To be general.
Can I ask you a question?
Please.
Lauren Silly, 147. So the last time we were at a meeting to talk about this, you had mentioned, so that you gave them until June 1st to extend the order of conditions. And they had requested longer than that, but so are they, like, they've been told that, they're like, they know that, they're aware
Oh, yeah.
that
They've
June
received the
1st
document
is the.
that states the date.
Okay, and then the other thing, I guess, so at the last meeting, you had mentioned that you went up to the site and they had put up the silt fence again around
Yes.
the replication area.
Yeah.
There's still silt fence, so I saw, after that meeting, we went and looked at, you could see the silt fence they put up around the actual area, but there's still silt fence, like, closer to the driveway that's been down, so is that's.
Yes. The short answer is yes, that's something they should have repaired as well, and
Okay.
they're aware of it. I think, well, I'm not gonna speculate, but the focus of the conversation was the replication area, so they may be thinking, oh, it was just the replication area. But I've clearly stated in other letters that all erosion control, not just the replication area.
Okay, so they're still
Yes.
not.
Yes.
Last question, I think, for me is, you mentioned you got the receipts about the soil that they put in the replication area.
Yes.
I'm assuming, but I guess my question is, that doesn't include, and this might be more planning board question, the soil that was used along the whole driveway?
No.
Because the soil that was put in the replication area is just, you can tell, is way better quality than what's been now draining down our driveway. So it's just, we don't know one, I guess, or I guess we could ask the planning board, like, I don't know, it looks like they got it from like a dump, like another site, it has debris in it, but like, it's not as much of your concern because it's not in the replication area, is that?
Technically, it falls under the planning board.
Unless it's eroding into the wetland.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying, it's sort of a fine, it's a fine line when it becomes our
Yeah.
jurisdiction as well. But that was noted in one, if not more than one of the letters, I mentioned the fact that there's glass and debris and other
Yeah.
materials within the soil, even though they decided to say, no, there was nothing, I don't know what you're talking about.
I guess I just want it clear that
It's
like,
documented.
it's like, we're okaying the soil, like, there's one kind of soil they use, they have the receipt, I'm not arguing that, I think
No,
that
no.
is good. But like, I don't wanna give them like okay, all the soil is great,
No.
because
Yeah,
it's not. I mean,
There should be
Right, and
trucking
we're-
logs though for all soil brought into site, right?
Yes,
They,
exactly.
those documents exist
Exists
somewhere.
somewhere.
They should,
They should,
anyways.
yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
But, yeah,
the
so
planning
this,
board might not have them if they were never like it's,
yeah, so this receipt, but they should still, even upon, whether we also bring it back to our jurisdiction, whether we request it or another department requests it, whether it's been handed in or not, once it's requested, it should be readily available, because you're right, it should be documented, they should have those in their own file for that exact purpose. But regarding the soils that were brought into the wetland restoration or replication area, excuse me, that would be something that would also be assessed by third-party review, because they're assessing that project specifically to that area. I mean, it sounds like we'll talk about it at the next meeting, but if the commission so chooses, they can say you need to review all the area that's within the commission's jurisdiction outside of that resource area that they're specifically working on. And at that point, then they may bring up other soils, but I think it would, so that receipt isn't necessarily saying, here's the paperwork, and we say, okay, it's, here's the paperwork, this might need to be looked at.
okay.
So-
And if you get the third party review, they would look at like the number of plants, all that stuff that was
Yes.
like part of. So.
Yeah, specific to that restoration, so.
Any other questions? Please,
Yeah, I have one question now.
please.
So pulling, the ability to pull the bond, is that still dependent on something passing at town meeting just coming up?
Yes, so again, that's not relevant to my understanding, and this is something I would need to go back and check about, but how planning board has used sort of paying for inspections or third-party review based analysis is that they have sat at a public meeting with the applicant or developer, whomever's representing or posting the bond, and establishing, okay, we're using those funds to pay for the third party. Now, I believe they still have to supplement what's now been used to make sure that that bond is still at the amount that was posted originally, but that's something I would need to seek more guidance on. But that, so I was stating that, meaning that has, I'm gonna double check on, but it's been a practice by other departments that goes without pulling the bond entirely, but pulling bond and basically kicking them off site is something that we have to wait until after town meeting, something that's passed there, to establish that.
Is there a certain article at a town meeting that needs to pass? or-
I need to double check with planning board, I know it's a planning board article though, and I apologize, I don't know it off the
You
top.
should have gotten something in the mail.
Yeah, no, we get the book, I can't remember.
Yeah,
what it
I
is.
wanna double
Let's
check
take
on
it.
that too, because I don't think it is actually a planning board article, because they said the selectmen were the ones that had to actually,
Right,
Oh,
right,
like-
there's been selectmen now.
yeah,
I was
so
just
I
looking
just
through it
wanna
online, but
make
couldn't
sure
find it.
it's on there. Yeah.
I'll double check with planning board and then
Well,
send an email out to you.
Okay, thanks.
And just thinking about the timeline of this stuff, so your next meeting's 2 weeks, you vote to get a third party, that's May, I mean, so it's, even if you get the third party and they say something isn't done, but that doesn't come back to the end of May, I mean, it's
We
kinda-
still,
it's-
but it would still be
Time's up.
beneficial for the commission, even if we're
Right,
pulled
to have
upon,
that
to have that
information.
review.
Yeah, I'm just, yeah, they're running out of time. Okay. Thank you.
Other questions, comments? Do you want to get into Key Smart?
Yes. So, we had another issue over at Keys Farm, and they were, trying to not work with them, but work with them continuing restoration work versus issuing a cease and desist, stopping all work, and then things get even worse. So they have actually been issued an enforcement order by the town of Hudson anyways, because of the sedimentation in the water that we saw previously. It seems the majority of that was just from what was settled in the brook. They have finally received some correspondence from the property owner, so they're working with them currently on matters between the two of them on conditions that the property owner wants to impose, but that becomes a civil discussion and outside of our purview. In terms of what has been done or what hasn't been done on site, the stormwater structures are constructed and functioning. They have additional erosion control on the roadway now since the roadway has been paved. And that was one of the issues in the past, was it wasn't paved and now you're getting everything from the site bypassing basins. Now the basins are all constructed, the roadway's paved, but then you lost some of the temporary swales that were redirecting that runoff, because the site's still not vegetated into the basins. That removed, so it was washing down the roadway across the road. So again, they've put another temporary, I guess, swale, you could say, of hay bales, soil, and then more hay bales just to make sure that nothing's washing down the roadway and stopping it from reaching the brook. They've also stated that they've started cleanup. I was out there when the snow was on the ground. After the snow was off the ground, they had stated they had initiated cleanup. There wasn't much cleaned up.
I saw some of them working. Because
Yeah,
I drove
this was
that road
recently.
every day last week.
Yeah.
I saw them out there almost every day.
So that was, you're talking about on the cleanup?
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah, in
that
that
was,
first area, not,
Yes.
so on that side of Hudson Road,
yeah, so
not
that,
across the street.
so that's since that second washout, basically.
Mhm.
Which I'm happy they're finally doing the cleanup, but basically just staying on them for that. And what I was stating initially in terms of not issuing a secondary cease and desist, but if the commission wishes, we can certainly issue an enforcement order and a cease and desist. But I've just been delaying issuing the permits until that cleanup is significantly done, because at this point they have enough to continue work on the house lots, but any new house lots, I don't feel that it's, the remediation area is at a point where I can sign off and state that it's to a point where it's not going to impact the resource area.
See, this has to do with the area by the old house, not the new one that they're building, that's closer to us, right? You know, there's one, yeah, that's.
The original driveway.
Yeah, it's the,
Yeah.
Well, by the
it's
original
the area,
driveway, that's what I meant.
if you're
A
looking
newer
at the
one
old
is
house to
not.
the right.
If you go further towards Bolton, there's the other
They put
house.
one lot, just, there's
Yeah,
one lot
no.
that's on the road,
Yeah,
it's
that's got nothing to do with that one, right?
No,
adjacent to that
Just where
old
that
house.
basin washed out
yeah,
during
the
that
large
flood.
subdivision area.
I kind of feel like keep progressing with construction and start stabilizing the soil is
Yeah.
important, right?
Right.
Instead of
Yeah, I
stopping
exactly.
work.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
the biggest issue is that they clear cut 20 acres, took the top layer soil off, and now it's just all running down.
Right,
Yeah.
So
exactly.
the sooner that they can get things
In
stabilized.
hindsight, it might have been better to build a retaining pool before they started cutting the trees down, but.
Yeah.
And then that's.
Well, they
the
did
thing,
a
too, those are
temporary, I
all
don't
like
understand whether you're a
basins
temporary
within
one,
the
why that's not
so
a
it's
permanent
basically just
thing,
cleaned
that,
up.
why would you
Yeah.
do it
It
twice?
wouldn't be a cease and desist
They
to
had a
get basins
temporary,
in
and then
get
they
the
had
small-
to do,
I guess
remember
could do
they
the
went in
temporary as well,
and
but
built
Right.
the permanent
Right.
I think
sooner
the
than
way
they would
to go
have
about it
because of
was
the
not
issues.
The best way to go at it.
Yeah, and that's really, it's the cleanup that caused the most sediment that was, I guess, stirred up and moved through to Danforth Brook and sort of through the remediation areas was, it was contained, but it sort of pooled more. was because of what wasn't cleaned up and it was just sitting there. So that's why I've been sort of just pushing for the cleanup versus stop all.
Now that spring is here, they're gonna start seeding the slopes of the ponds.
So that's something I can ask them about and provide you with an
Just
update.
looks like
in
there's
terms
a lot of
like-
erosion even on those slopes.
Yeah, so there's jute netting, or you can hydro seed even temporarily before they're doing site work. Because I mean, the timeline is relatively quickly, but if they're being held back because they have to focus on cleaning, so they're not gonna have the people doing the work, then it's a longer period of time, the site's open. I'll check with them and get back to you.
Any other fun and lovely updates? Are we good now?
No. Oh, actually, yes. On Sunday, we are having a celebration for the designation of the Nashua and the portions of the 11 towns in New Hampshire and Massachusetts as being a wild scenic river. And that will be at the Bill Ash Visitor Center. And I can email you all that again, but it's up on the town website as well.
At Oxbow.
Yes. Yep. So it'll be exciting.
We should be.
It's supposed to be a nice day, so hopefully that holds up.
Always good to go to Oxbow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's live
Yeah.
music too,
Yeah.
right?
Yay.
Oh, shoot.
There'll be some representatives there, possibly Congresswoman, some senators as well. Okay, cool.
And conservation administrator. or
Conservation
two.
administrator, our town administrator, I believe, is
Oh.
planning on going, so,
Nice.
Party.
yeah.
Anything else good? Wow, lots of, it's always good things.
Lots of good things.
Anything else that we need to discuss this evening? Go ahead.
Not to discuss, but Trails Committee, and I think it should be noted, built a wonderful property. It's actually over Great Brook on the trust property, the old Skinner property, over across the street from Slater's, next to environmental pools. So that will be, and is a new trail extension.
Right.
More good things.
No, we have to do is name it.
So where, it's by environmental pool, where,
So it's in the property, literally between 401 Main and environmental pool.
okay.
There's the brook.
Up here is
river
the
that
old
comes through there.
mill.
Oh, so this is at the lime kiln?
No,
Am I
no.
thinking of the wrong property?
This is Route 117, Slater's is over
Oh,
here.
okay.
Slater's is over
Okay.
here. And up here is an old mill that was one time,
Button factory.
huh?
Was that one of the button factory?
Fifeshire was the
Button
button.
factory.
Yeah.
Is it
No,
the
this is an
south
old mill
side?
that used to do wire
Which side of the road is this on? If you're going east? The
east.
right side or the left side?
If you're going east, it's on the left side. If you're
Okay.
going west, it's on the right side.
Okay,
Slater's is over here on the, on
Okay.
that side.
okay.
And then environmental pools is up. Environmental pools is up, the other way, but I've got a bunch of, if you wanna take a look through this. That was the old bridge right there.
Ooh, that's a tough one.
Which was two flanks.
Bouncy bridge.
Yeah, that works, it's safe.
Now
Kids
it's
like the bouncy
a bunch of
bridges.
different things. We drilled into the rocks. We drilled into the rocks and they,
Nice.
and we pulled a bunch of stuff out of the shed, which I'm not sure how much we pulled out. We pulled a bunch of stuff out and got, all used it and,
Good.
Now you gotta update the Bolton Trail guy, dang it.
Yeah.
bulldozers?
we, huh?
No bulldozers?
No
Don't have any
bulldozers.
machinery in there.
No, I was the heavy machinery
Yeah,
carrying
that's all
the
you
stuff
need.
in,
It's good for you.
you know, 23,000 steps up and down that hill. But it was, you know, it was from this side to that side and, you know, I don't know, not everybody can see, I don't know how to do this without, everybody can see it.
No, they went swimming after.
No, nobody went swimming. Nobody ended up, nobody ended up in the water. Huh?
Nobody took a little swim or anything?
No, nobody took a swim.
Well, I gotta go check that out now, dang it.
See, that's the
Oh my
culvert.
gosh, you can put it level and everything?
Yeah, we tried our best.
Oh my
You know,
goodness.
just took it out.
Right into the rock, yeah.
And it basically, at the end of it, because it's that long, we pushed over to that rock, went to that rock, and this one we extended out and they cantilevered it. So they put it up into the dirt and it can move with the,
As it shifts
as the
across
dirt
teeth.
moves, the
Yeah.
thing
You get
moves
the
and
drive.
everything else. It's pretty,
Very, very cool.
pretty technical.
It's good.
So, and we put a bunch of other, Alex Arenas, I can't remember his last name, but Alexis, he lives in Stowe, and he's a woodworker. He built 4, 5 bog bridges on his site, on his own, and we went out and put them out on Vaughan Hill, on the road going from Muan out to the bypass. There's 2 bypasses out there, which was squishy, and as everybody was walking down there, it was really wet, they kept walking to the side and kept moving it out and further, so we put down some bog bridges on there, left a little room for horses if they wanted to go by, and people walked along, you know. I have some pictures of that in here somewhere, but it's, both of them are up on the website. We also have the website is cooking now. We took over the name from Gordon Taylor, had owned this Bolton Trails name or something like that, so we moved that and it's now on the trust site. And what we're doing now is trying to work on the maps, so we can take the maps that the other land stewards had issues with us using without his name all over them. We're gonna make our own maps, but that's another project that they're working on, but that's a complicated project, but that's, you know, I'm not sure that's gonna be done for a while, but, you know, the trust is gonna own the maps, as opposed to Jeff Lawrence owning the maps. Simple as that. We tried to buy them, but he didn't want to sell them, he wanted too much money for them. So, Dan Gaffney, is that the guy's name? Dan,
Yep.
he was the president of the trust, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
He said no, and the deal fell through, so. I got a bunch of buttons if you want some buttons and stickers.
Oh.
I'll bring them into the next meeting. We can pass them on to everybody. But it's just been a good, you know, spring wasn't, there hasn't been a lot of fall out there, I've noticed. We did take down some big trees over on Rattlesnake, was it Rattlesnake Way in the back, a while back? No, it was on the Northwoods, way in the back. But we haven't had, like last year, there were trees down all over the place.
When you guys spent a long time out there.
Last March, but we haven't had that kind of stuff there, so. Chainsaw's still working. I haven't had to sharpen it.
And you haven't injured yourself, right?
No, not yet.
Good spring so
You
far.
can't go wrong, yeah. All right. All that said, I'd like to make a motion that we officially close the Tuesday, April 23rd, 2019 meeting of the Bolton Conservation Commission.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Good night, CATV.